All right, guys. So today we're going to work through creating these contact and social icon sets using purely bricks. So no add-ons, no plugins, no additional frameworks. We are going to use a small framework, which is basically using the bricks CSS variables feature. We don't need anything else to make this happen. So you can do this and you can do it without any add-ons or plugins. I'm not saying that the add-ons or plugins aren't helpful, but you don't need them to do this. Okay, so we're going to get started by just having a look at what this is. So we've actually got a structure here where we have a div here, which has got some items in it. Our div is a UL. Our item is a li, so we've got a list going on here, so it's really good for accessibility. We then have another div which we set up as a link, so that's where we're going to put our link to whatever we link to, so Facebook, Instagram, phone number, whatever it is. And then we've got an SVG inside there for an icon. Now with the SVGs, you can actually put a link directly on the SVG. What I found is that it's better to actually put a div above that and make that the link. And the reason is because when you add a link to the icon, it automatically adds an anchor tag wrapper around the icon, but you cannot see it in the structure. It's a little bit harder to edit with your CSS to style it. So it makes sense to actually just put it there in the DOM so you can see it and work on it rather than putting a magic link that wraps it just by putting a link on the actual SVG. So that's my feeling on it. I think that makes sense. And that's pretty much what we're going to build today. We then have some CSS, which I put all at the top level. And the CSS in here, we're going to use a scoped variables to make it more usable and I guess easy to override and understand later. Because I'm using pure bricks, this editing window is not very friendly. I prefer using advanced theming, which gives me a lot more features, but we have to work with this and I'm a lot slower with this now. I'm used to advanced theming, but anyway, so we basically have CSS that makes it work. And then we've got some modifiers here. We've got a vertical modifier and a small modifier. And all we're doing with our vertical is setting our flex direction to column. All we're doing with small is setting our font size to a new font size. And these are the modifiers. So that's the small, and this has got both small and vertical on it. Other than that, they're exactly the same set. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is reset this. So I've got WP reset on here. So I'm going to do that while you watch. Then we're going to start again. So I'm going to go to my tools, reset. And I'm going to go back to that one there and restore our snapshot. Okay, sometimes this logs you out, sometimes it doesn't. Pages, it didn't. Okay, so if I go to my edit with bricks for my contact icons, it should be empty. There we go, we've got nothing there. So I'm going to start by putting a section in there, and in that section, we've got a container already. So I'm going to put I'm going to use a div. Now I tend to like starting my layouts like this and my components using divs rather than blocks. A div is a pure div. A block is a flex block set to row, automatically set to 100%. So it's just a div with some settings on it, which can get in the way. It's generally good when you're just doing layouts, but if you're creating components, I recommend always starting with a div. And on that div, we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call this contact icons. And inside our contact icons, what we're going to need is, I'll just use the plus here, it's much easier. We need another div here, which will be our item. And another one inside there, which will be our link. And then inside our link, we're going to put an SVG in there. And on that SVG, I'm going to call that my icon. Okay, and there's our basic structure. Now on my social icons, I want to make that a UL, and I want to make that flex. I'll use the UI for this because it's just easier. And on an item, we want to make that an LI, so a list item, and we want to make that flex as well. And then on our link, I think we'll make that a link there, and make it flex. I like making it flex rather than the default block. It just gives us some more control over it. And then we've got our icon down here, which is our SVG icon. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a SVG from this hugeicons.com. I'm just going to look for Facebook. I've actually got an account on here. Interestingly, the one I like for this are these rounded ones, which are actually in the free version. So if you don't have an account, you've got all these free ones here anyway. If you want solid strokes, duotones, etc., you've got to pay for this. It's not expensive. It is definitely worth having. But I kind of like the look of these free ones anyway, the rounded ones for this particular instance. Now I'm going to add my own border. So I don't want anything with the border around it. I'm just going to get the plain old Facebook. I'm going to copy the SVG to the clipboard. Come back to my editor, into my icons. I'm going to tell that it is a code, and I'm going to paste that into there. And the only thing I need to do here is remove the color, the width, and the height, because we're going to set that dynamically. So I'm just going to remove those from the icon, then sign the code. Okay, once we sign it, we get a little Facebook icon there. All right, now we need to start doing setting some class names, and then we need to start styling this up. So I use BEM naming, so my block level is contact icons. So I'm going to type that there. And if I'm using advanced thema, I can do this a lot easier and a lot quicker, but I'm going to have to type these in manually. I'm not the world's fastest typist, so bear with me. So it's our item. This is our link element. And this is our icon elements. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So now we've got our icon, link, item elements, and we've got our block at contact icons up here. So do all of your styling at your block level instead of spreading them out all over the place. I mean, the default stuff here, like, just setting the display to flex, display to flex, things like that, I just use the UI for. There's no point in going to CSS for that. I mean, you can if you want, but I just use the UI for that basic sort of stuff here. So on our contact icons here, I am going to go into my CSS. I'm going to do all of my CSS here. Now, if you press R and tab, that gives you the root, which refers to whatever's selected up here. Now, this is a real common mistake people make with bricks, is that when I've selected this contact icons element, my class isn't selected by default. So I've started typing root, and root is going to refer to the ID. So I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to click on my class icons, make sure that's highlighted because that's what we want to style. Press R tab again, and there's my root. Okay, and we're going to start styling this up. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the, in fact, did I change that to a UL? Let's go back for a second now. I did change it to a UL. I can't see with this thing here. That's strange. The editor does some strange things. Normally you would see the, from the changing it to UL, you'd see the indentation and you'll see a bullet point. In this case, it's not doing that. So let's just get rid of them anyway. So I'm going to set the margin to 0, padding to 0, and my list style type to none. Okay, so that gets rid of all the UL stuff. So the padding, your spacing, and the little dot. Okay. That is our basics for our root. I'm going to put a block above that because I normally have a settings block and then an application block. So we're going to root here. I'm then going to set my font size, but I'm going to use a variable for this because what we're going to do is we're going to do all the spacing and padding everything in EMs, which means we only have to change one thing, which is the font size, and then everything changes relative to that. So I'm going to set my font size to, and by the way, I mentioned I've got some CSS variables I'm going to use. I always recommend you start with a framework, whether you create it yourself or whether you use something like automatic CSS or core, whatever you're using, you should have a framework. what I've done in here is in the variables, I've just created some basic spacing, topography, and grids. So we're going to use those here. So what I'm going to do is on my font size, I'm going to click on this variables tab here, button here, I should say. And what we want is a text. I'm going to use my text XXL. And that's actually a large text size. Okay. And that's the font size we've set there. And what I'm going to do is on my root, which would be on the UL level, I'm going to now set my font size, actual font size. And excuse my keyboard too. It's I know it's a bit noisy. It's a cheap keyboard. My other one broke, so bear with the keyboard noise. Those that you got loudspeakers and complain about that, sorry. It's just I can't do anything about that right now. Okay. Okay, so I've set my font size to XXL, and you can see that changed automatically. Now we need to do a little bit more with that as well. So what else do we want? We want to put some padding. I'm going to actually be more specific with this actually. Let's set the color as well. I'm going to set the color to, I don't know, purple. And then we're going to set the color down here. And you'll see why we use CSS variables as we progress along. So see how our icon's gone purple? We've got this brick stuff in the way here, but you can see the icon's gone purple. Now, what we're going to do is target the individual item. So we're going to target the item here, which is actually, sorry, not the item, the link. We want to target the link. The item is really just our list item. Inside that is the link that we want to target. So we're going to target that link. Do root __ link. This is the beauty of using BEM, or one of the beauties of using BEM naming in bricks. When we have a class, our block class name up here, which is contact-items, icons, all we have to do is a root, __ and then the name of the element that we're structuring over here, and that's all we need. Now, if we change this from contact icons to social icons or our icons or whatever we change that, we don't have to change any of the CSS because that automatically updates to whatever this is here. And then the element name always remains the same anyway. So that's one of the beauties of doing it this way. So we're going to, on the link, we're going to set our link. What are we going to do there? We want to set a padding of, if I said 0.3 EM, you can see some padding around it there. Now we're not going to do it that way because we're going to use CSS variable. So I'm going to use link padding up here. Okay, and then we use that variable down there. All right, works exactly the same, but what we end up with is we've got a whole bunch of CSS rules here. We end up with a basically set of settings. I'll actually call that our settings. And then we'll have our application of those settings down here. So to make modifiers or change the behavior of this, we just need to change these settings by using these CSS variables. So it's a really cool way of doing this. Now, what else do we want? We want to have a link, maybe a border radius. A border. 1px solid. And we're going to use the color. Keep our color the same. Oops. And border radius. We'll make it super round, so 999 pixels. And it's going to be super round. Okay, so we're going to use our link padding. Already done that. Link border. Okay, we've got a border radius. Okay, so we've got a border radius now. You can see it taking shape up here. So if we want that to be a little bit tighter, we make it 0.2 EM. Okay, so it's a little bit tighter around there, the padding. Okay, so what else do we want? Maybe a background. Make this, I don't know, hash F6, 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 just so we can see something there. Okay, so a little bit of background there. Maybe we need to make it a little bit FO. So it's a little bit gray, so we can just see something there, okay? So that's our link background. Now, what we've got, what else do we want to do? We want to actually target this for some transition. So let's set some transition on there. We'll set that globally because we might want to do other transitions. So we'll do a global transition. Or I would probably do a CSS variable for this. In fact, let's do that. Let's go to our CSS and in our variable, let's create a transitions. Type that properly. Yes, I did. Okay. All right. In our transitions, we're going to create a FW for our framework. Transition. Transition duration fast, and we're going to make that 0.3 seconds. Okay, we're going to grab that, and we'll make it our transitions medium, 0.6 seconds. And let's make a slow one. 1 second. Okay, so we just created 3 transition variables in bricks. Now what we can do is now for our transition, we could come back to our transitions here, go to our CSS variables, go to our, scroll up a little bit here. Oh, this editor is not good with the, what's our transitions? They're not showing up. So I'm going to hit the save. Hit the refresh. Okay, love this. How it does this, and that doesn't do that in the front end, just in the editor. We'll come back to fixing that. Okay, contact icons, style, CSS. Where are we? Transition. Yeah, there we go. So we go transition. Now we hit our. I wonder if you can move this. You can't. Okay. There we go. Maybe I can move that up a little bit. Yes. Space, typography, grids. Must be down further here. There we go. This needs fixing up. This needs really needs fixing up. This editor, this sort of drop down is not good. Automatic CSS actually replace this and make it a lot easier, but that needs fixing up there. So we're going to use our variable for that. We could have just put it in 0.6 seconds, but this means that if we use a CSS variable, if we decide we want our medium transition to be any faster or slower, we can just change it in one place. And I'll put ease. Ease. Okay, there's our transition. Now we're going to go to our link and we're going to see our transition to var. Just double check, make sure I haven't. Transition. Transition to transition. Now, what we're going to do here is with the things that we want to transition. So when we hover, we want things to change. What do we want to change? We want to change the blink background. So I'm going to copy that name there. And I'm going to add, I'm going to use the modifier syntax. I like to use this for modifier. So I'm going to do 2 dashes and then hover. And we'll make that purple on hover. And we'll make our color dash dash hover to white. All right, there we go. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to change these. We're going to swap these values when we detect a hover. I like to use hover and focus within, focus visible, I should say. So I'm going to put roots is hover, comma, focus visible. So either one of those is true. We want to swap those over. So we're going to grab the color property and then just do var color dash dash hover. So you see how keeping your naming conventions exactly the same makes it so easy for you to actually type this code out and see exactly what it's supposed to be. So we're going to do the other one, which is the link background to var dash dash hover. Look at that. We now have some transitioning happening. Okay, let's do a transform. So link, I'll do a link transform. We're going to set that to none. We're going to do a link transform hover. I'm going to set that to translate y, I think say -4px. Again, you could use variables, global variables, like we've done up here with our transition. So you might use a transition, distance, short, medium, long, and use those there so you can change those globally if you want to. Okay, so we're going to use the same methodology here. Going to link transform, and I'm going to, under the transform, var link transform, and then down in our hover focus, we're going to use our link transform to var hover. So it move up a little bit there, okay? So we've got a transition happening here. We've got some weird stuff happening here in bricks. If I look at that on the front end, let's see if it actually does it. So on the front end, it's fine, but in the bricks builder editor, it is not fine. Now, a couple of things we need to do in here is, let's just duplicate that a couple of times, is we need to add a few things in here. One of those is with the SVGs, we need to make sure SVGs have a width, otherwise they will not work on OS X and in Firefox. So let's have a look at our SVGs. I wish this had a full screen like AT does, but it doesn't. I'm going to go root, tab, underscore, underscore, icon. So our SVGs we called icon. So the BEM element name will be underscore, underscore, icon. And we're going to make sure our width is 100%. Okay, now what else do we going to do here? Oh, we need some spacing, don't we? So let's set our gap, or let's call it gap, to say 0.3 EM. And we're going to use our gap for our spacing. So I'm going to call that the column gap. So I'm on the UL at the moment. Column gap. And we're going to use that same thing for our row gap for when we go vertical. Okay. So there we go. Now that should not be going to 100% width. That did, but for some reason it is in the editor. I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's have a look there. What is going on with that? Why is that 100% width? UL flex. Why is that going 100% width? We've also got a problem here too. So what is that problem? What is our problem? Let's see if we can spot that problem. I've done something incorrectly here. Root is hover. What we need is to hover the link. So root, link is hover. Now they're individual. Okay, there we go. Now we're individual. Why is our color not changing on our icon? I think I had this issue before. It's to do with the inheritance of the color. It's already been set up here. I think what we need to do is set that color there on the actual link. Let's have a look at that. Yes, that's it there. There we go. So that's right now. So what is going on with this? Why is that gone huge? Because I haven't set the size of the icon. That's it. So of the icon. Let's have a look at that. So link, and let's go to. So it's the icon we want to set. Maybe set that to 1 EM. There we go. So the icon we set to 1 EM, not 100%. And there we go. There's our icons there. And they're working as expected. Now let's add some additional stuff here. Let's add a link box shadow. Well, we're going to make that none. Not nuin. Box shadow, and we'll make that say 0 by Y of say 5px, blur of 5px, and let's make it black for now. So we'll use a hex 000 so we can easily change this later. And that's a dash dash hover. Our box shadow we want to set on our link. Down here. Okay, then box shadow, and down in our hover state, we want to change that on hover to be a var. Hover. There we go, we've got a black box shadow happening there. That's way too dark. Let's drop that back just by adding, say, maybe make that 5.5. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right, there might be too much box shadow. Might have to drop that back, but you can see what's going on here. You can see it happening, and that's exactly what we wanted to happen there. All right, let's just change a couple of these icons. So I'm going to go to my free SVG. I'm going to add my Twitter. I'm just going to grab that X there, copy the SVG, go back to here, go to the icon. We'd make sure the class is not selected. On that icon, we paste that in, get rid of our height, width, and color, sign the code. Let's do the last one, which we'll do, say, YouTube. Grab that, copy that, go back to our YouTube. This is the editor not updating properly, by the way. It's not selected. Get rid of our width, height, and color. Sign the code. Save. Let's see what's happening there. There we go. It's working as it should. All right, now we can actually play with this in the front end as well. So if I look at these icons here, they've got a small padding, and that's because of and these icons are different shapes. So the X goes top right, top left corners, so it looks like it gets closer to the edge because of the curve. So what we can do is have a look at these here. Go to our contact icons, styles. And we've got in there, we've got our gap set to 3. Our link padding set to 0.2. Let's make that 0.3. Okay, we've got more padding there, 0.4. So there's more padding. So we can play around with these. We want it really tight, it's 0.1, 0.3. 0.3 looks about right to me. So let's come back to there. Go back into our icons, back to our style. Make sure your class is selected. We're going to change that from 0.3 to 0.2. Okay, so I'm going to hit save and reload because this editor is just not updated properly. Okay, weird. So the editor is just not displaying correctly here, and I don't know why. Let's just try, have a look at that icon there. Oh, it's not liking that SVG. What's wrong with that SVG? Let's get rid of that one. That is the Facebook, Twitter. Let's grab that Twitter one again. Here's our Twitter. Copy the SVG, chuck it into there. I might have accidentally deleted something I shouldn't have, so let's just make sure it's the width, height, and color we get rid of. We sign it. Yeah, there we go. Change the SVG, refresh, and away it goes. So that is that part of it. Now, the next part is the modifier. So let's actually just copy this whole container. On that container there, I'm just going to give it some row gap of, say, 40 pixels. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create some modifiers here, and I'm going to show you how simple that is. So let's go to our contact icons. I'm actually going to look at the CSS here. We're going to then, down the bottom of our CSS, we're going to create some modifiers. All I need to do is grab my font size variable here, go down the bottom, I'm going to create modifiers. And we're going to do root dash dash small. Set our font size to, using our CSS variables, we're going to use our typography. We're going to set it to text small. Okay, so we've now got a modifier, which will be the root, which is the contact icons dash dash small. So I'm going to copy that name. I'm going to go to the editor. I'm going to put that in and do dash dash small. Bam. We got a small version of our icons just by adding a modifier which changes one variable, which changed the spacing, changed the type size, changed the padding, changed everything. Because we're using a font size, we can use EMs to be relevant to that font size. Now, the other one I'm going to do is a very quick one is, I'm just going to duplicate that same container there, create one last one, and we're done. And in here, I'm going to go to my contact icons again, my CSS, and I'm going to look at what did I not do here? Okay, I didn't create a variable. Let's do that now. I'm going to create a variable, which is my flex direction. I'm going to set that to row by default. I'm going to set our flex direction to row. So on that there. Flex direction to flex direction to row. Now for our modifier, we're going to create down the bottom here, we're going to create one which is going to be called vertical. So R tab dash dash vertical. And with that, we're going to change our flex direction to be column. Okay, so how do we make this a vertical column? We grab the contact icon's name, copy that to the clipboard, or type it if you're super fast at it. Then there, dash dash vertical. Okay, and we have a vertical version. So we've got small icons and vertical. We take the small off, and we've just got the normal size icons, that's vertical. So from this one set, we now have two variations, basically by overriding a single variable on each one. Okay, that is the beauty of using these CSS variables and having a settings section up the top here. So this is all your settings, and then your application down here. Once you're set up, you don't have to worry about that. You don't care how the application is done. All you care about is what do you actually want to change on here. You have your defaults. You might have a default, for example, here. If you're using a framework, you might set this to be some, wireframe colors, like some shades of gray. And then you might create a modifier down here for, root dash dash primary solid. And here you would change your color for your icon to be maybe a primary light version of the primary. You change the background to be the primary color. And that's all you might have to do. Just two variables, change your color to be, say, white, your background, your link background to be your primary color, and then apply that, and you've got a primary color variation of your icons. So that's it. I think that's a lot to go through, but that's pretty much how I work. All of the stuff that I create in the same way. No matter how small or big it is, I always create a set of CSS variables and apply those. You might actually just type in values while you're playing with it and working with it. You then take those values, convert them into variables, and put the variable in there instead. And that way you've got a lot of control over variations. If you want to set your defaults, you just come back to the root here. So if you use this as a template, you stick it onto a site, and you want to set the default behavior of those icons, you just change these variables and then set your modifiers for anything that you want different. So that is my standard way of doing this. I actually use a framework that I'm creating using advanced thema and using these CSS variables and bricks for how I work. And I would use all those through here for my colors, my sizes, my typography, all that sort of stuff. But it's completely the same principle whether you use core framework, automatic CSS, whatever you're using, it's the same idea. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully that is useful and helpful for you guys. And this is something that you can use in your day-to-day work in bricks. So thanks for listening. And if you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thanks, guys.